should be played at high volume. This should be played at high volume. This should be played at high volume. Preferably in a residential area.
The following thoughts on Hoppe Hour do not represent Cox Media Group or its sponsoring. Anything you hear may and will be used against you. Thank you. Voted as best local podcast in Tampa Bay by the Creative Loafing. You're listening to Hoppe Hour.
What up? What's happening? This is Hoppe Hour. I am your host, Ryan Hoppe, and I'm pretty pumped about this next guest. I've been listening to this guy when he was on the previous show for probably 7 years now. He is now the host of the Eric Zane Show, which can be found on YouTube. Radio free agent Eric Zane is on Hoppe Hour. What's up, man?
Ryan, I am so excited that you had invited me, and I think this is fantastic. So thank you for all those nice words.
No problem, man. What I loved about you on air and what I love about your show that you do on YouTube now is you got such a personality that comes off so genuine, but it's edgy at the same time. You're just a lot of fun to listen to.
Well, thank you, man. You know, and what's crazy about that is when I did the radio show, well, first of all, with a show that has 5 people on it, with 3 main principals, you're sometimes there's a fight over airtime. And to be told, there was 4 of us really that were getting, fighting for the same amount of mic time. So I did my thing, but, whenever we would talk about things, sometimes I wouldn't get as much of an opportunity to let my entire whatever I can do show because you've got limited time to do your thing. So being now that when the radio show ended, when I got fired, it was like, okay, now what? And I shot that stupid video for the first time, and it was more of like just a release. And then I realized, I was like, this isn't that bad. I can actually pull this off, and it's way different. People will see a side of me that they've never seen before by being able to lead something, direct something, and do it on my own,
How weird was it when you first uploaded it and you had so many comments and so many views? Did you even think that was going to happen?
No, I didn't. There was a couple of things that happened after I got fired that has helped me along. And because your confidence is so damaged, at least mine was when I got fired, one of the first things that made me realize that things were going to be okay was the support from people. Once we started doing that, first of all, when after it happened, there was a lot of backlash locally. It was a big story. And so when I went on the first time, a lot of people responded, and that really helped me a lot. And so once I started, and I realized that people that I had I kept it positive. I didn't want to act like a victim or like I was being mistreated or whatever. People responded to that. People don't like it when people cry that something bad has happened to them. So I just kept going.
By no means was I a public figure, but I worked for Rover's Morning Glory out of Cleveland last year for about 4 months, and I got fired. And isn't it kind of weird? You would know this because you were on the show for 10 to 15 years. I was just on Rover for 4 months. But isn't it weird when you get recognized in public and everyone's like, I'm so sorry to hear about you getting fired. Like, it's the most awkward thing because you just don't know what to say, Yeah.
What I've found is people, because of YouTube, I get a lot of people saying, oh, it's just not the same with you gone. They'll say that to me. But I've gotten more people just saying, hey, man, I love how it is on YouTube. I love your family. I love your wife. I've got like this I do like 30 minutes, 30, 40 minutes. And, when I was on the air, I really incorporated my family. I would always tell stories about my family. And that was all I could really bring to the show was just kind of bringing that in, try to make it entertaining and do my thing. So YouTube allowed me to get more of that. So I get more comments from people talking more about that than any of the awkward stuff.
Back when you were on the old show, did your kids ever get mad that you would talk about them on air, like since your son has 2 kids, or did they know that's what comes with the territory of being on a nationally syndicated show?
I don't really remember even one time when that was a real issue. I mean, I went so far at one point when my son that you mentioned, Jim, was doing poorly in school. This is before he started making babies. And he was doing poorly at school. And it was so frustrating that on the air I said, I am ordering all teenage girls to not to avoid Jim, and in fact walk up to him and say, I was going to let you have a sniff, but your grades are so bad you can't have it. So,
how did he react to that? Did he laugh because he knew you're on a funny show, or was he mad about that?
I don't ever remember him getting mad at me at all.
That's pretty cool, man, because a lot of kids or wives would get mad at they're being made fun of on air. But I think that goes to show that when you would make fun of someone on air, it always came off like you were just being a guy that would bust balls, you know?
Yeah, and it's funny because, you know, and that was how it was, but yet that exact thing is what was my undoing.
How awkward was it when you got fired? Like during the middle of the rant, was there ever a point where you're saying to yourself, okay, Zane, shut up? Or was it just what you felt?
Not a bit. In fact, because I had done this a million times.
Yeah.
And in hindsight, the story was fine, but for some reason I felt the need to jazz it up a little. And so I incorporated the guy who ran the arena and ended up making fun of him. And I couldn't figure out why no one in the room was laughing at that part. And it wasn't like I was shooting for a big laugh or anything, but it just seemed like the air was sucked out of the room, and I didn't know why, and I couldn't place it. So the bit ended, and then my boss came in, and he was laughing. And he said, hey, I'm going to get a call from so-and-so. And I said, for what? And he said, oh, he's probably going to call me and be upset about that, but – and he was laughing. This is the guy who fired me. And I was like, well, I go, yeah, right, whatever, boss, no big deal. And I didn't think a thing of it, man, at all. And then, I mean, because, again, I had been down this road a billion times, and this had never been a problem. So, well, no, I take it back. It had been a problem in the past on other occasions, but I think they just got sick of it, and then that was that, as far as I can tell, man. It was. It really wasn't that sexy of a story. You hear about radio firings, and too often you hear about somebody says something really distasteful or horrible or racist or misogynistic. That was never my game. Never, ever, ever my game. And never, ever did I ever want to hurt anybody. It just came out weird sometimes. And in the old days, they would pick up the pieces for me, but not so. And, you know, I'm left holding the bag.
Did you ever feel like after they got rid of you that they weren't being loyal, or did you know that that's what comes with being edgy on air?
You mean the other guys on the show or the radio company?
I would say the radio company.
Boy, you know, they always seem to like it if no one complained, you know?
Yeah.
And that's, you know, that's the nature of the beast, I guess. Well, it depends, you know. You go through, because at previous ownership, they would always support me. And then when it changed hands, that was more of a problem. As the years wore on, I think my act just grew a little thin on them, you know.
Would you say that we have a thing where we get offended too easily with a case of fake outrage in 2016?
I mean, in this case, I think it's okay for a person to get offended. I think the guy who I offended, I honestly think that that's okay to be offended, and I think it's okay to complain. I really don't have a ton of fault with this particular scenario for anybody involved. The only thing that bothered me was that for years and years and years, they made a ton of money off of me doing this. And then it was a case of pay my hand, slap my hand. So it was just I couldn't get it right because I didn't know what set of rules to follow. So I don't know if people get offended too easily. I think it's about the same, really.
Was there ever a point, though, where you could sort of feel the vibe with the management getting weird in the hall, or did this just come out of nowhere? Did you ever get any inklings that they would try to find a way to get rid of you?
No, there was 3 times that I got in trouble in the last 3 years, and it was for the same thing. I offended a client of the radio station is what I did. And, you know, these people pay money, and like I said, in the old ownership and management, they would smooth it out for me because they knew that the product was good and it was worth fighting for. But for whatever reason, the new guys didn't really think that fit into their game plan. So despite years of success and ratings that were unbelievable, I mean, they really, really were, they said, you know what, you're a liability. get out. So that was that.
Have you talked to anybody from the show, like Free Beer or Producer Joe or Howings? Have you spoken to any of them?
Very little. I can only guess at what the heck they're feeling. I know that they took a tremendous amount of blowback, and there's been a couple texts exchanged between Free Bear and I, and that's about it. It's kind of weird. I don't have any ill will towards anybody, but I don't know. It's just something felt weird. I can't quite put my finger on it, but I just still can't believe that it even happened in the first place. And so I'm still processing it, to be honest with you.
The next day after I got fired from Rover's Morning Glory, it was the weirdest thing. I'm just laying in bed like I was on some acid trip, and I just couldn't believe it happened. Like, how are you feeling after you get fired on such a bigger spectrum? What's that like?
Well, that's a great question, because I was suicidal, and I've never been suicidal. And that was excruciating. What happened to me was being 45 years old with a son who's 20 but dependent, with 2 children of his own, and putting a daughter through college and saving for another one and trying to save for when I get old. I was just ruined. And it was 2 days. The firing happened on a Friday. On Sunday is when I thought of killing myself 3 times. And it happened in the morning, and I told my wife. And I told her I was frightened about that. And then it happened in midday, and it happened in the evening. And then I went to the loony bin for that night. And I was evaluated, and they almost didn't let me leave. But I swore that I would stay with somebody at all times, and I swore I would go to the doctor on Monday, which I did. And he gave me some medicine, non-addictive medicine, because I can't take addictive medicines. I can't take narcotics because I'll become addicted to them. So he gave me a non-habit forming medicine, and I listened to his directions, and I'm okay now. But, man, that was a complete disaster. I mean, it was a real anxiety-filled, nervous breakdown nightmare. Wouldn't wish it upon anybody. So it was really, really bad, man. Really bad.
Now, when you went to the loony bin, did you think there was going to be a chance they would hold you in there forever? Like, how did you persuade them that you were good to leave?
I just answered her questions. I just talked to her. And then she sat there and looked at me, and she said, "You're close." She goes, "You are very close to not being able to leave for the night, at least." And she goes, "I can do that. I can hold you here." I said, "I understand. Look, I get it. I'm not here to try to get away from you. I'm here to try to get help. So, let's talk about it a little more." And she thought about it, and she said, "Well, do you think you can go home?" I said, "I'd rather go home." And then we talked a little more, and then she agreed. So,
would you say that doing the show has been a good way for you to, like, vent but have fun to try and move on at this new point of your life?
Absolutely, man. Like I said, doing that and expressing myself in a way different, where I'm the main person, is different than what I was doing, because Freebeer would lead the breaks, and we would all chime in. Doing that show is much different. So, doing that show now, to be able to express myself, get some comedy out of it through these dumb interactions with my silly family, knowing that people are entertained by that, to me, is terrific. It has built confidence in me. I know I can go back out into the field. I know I can do a radio show. Sitting here talking to you helps me because, A, we're talking shop, and I know people are going to hear it. And with that in mind, to me, it brings out the best in me. I can perform. I can carry on a conversation. I can make a point clearly. All of that happened because of sitting in front of a video camera, talking into it, and just talking about stuff,
Where do you think your show can go? Because I think when you were growing up as a kid, you never imagined you're going to be on a nationally syndicated show. So where do you want to see this YouTube video series go?
Honestly, I want it to be an accessory to my radio show. I want to do a radio show, and God willing, I will. And to be honest with you, I think I will. I think before too long, I'll be on the radio. And then I'm going to keep doing that because I know it's a valuable thing for the audience because they've seen a side of me that they didn't see. So my goal is to continue to do that and also do an audio podcast with additional content for whomever I'm working for and just use it as an accessory to improve the listenership of the radio show.
Now, have you spoken to different places in Grand Rapids or maybe other cities about getting back on the air, or are you doing this right now to just get your foot in the water?
No, I've spoken to radio stations in Grand Rapids, and I'm continuing to do that. And at first I did the video podcast, and the goal was 100% do this, set up my own studio, set up my own website, the usual ways that you've seen people be successful at that. And I think I could have done exclusively that because I was fortunate enough to have the audience that supported me. But there's something about terrestrial radio, as many knocks as you've heard about it, that is important to me, and that is competing. And knowing that the people in the town that you're living in, not only because doing a podcast is great, but to me, when you can go out and then do a broadcast on location, or you can meet people, or you can go and do a charity event, that's kind of like the whole package, and that's kind of like where the rubber meets the road, if you will.
If you were to get back on the radio, would you want to do AM talk radio, a morning show on a rock channel? Would you want to be a DJ? What would be your plan?
I would do a talk show on whatever format, because we were blessed in Grand Rapids the way we were successful is the show got successful when we started to talk and just be ourselves. So we got a lot of listenership from all different formats, and that's why the show had such high ratings in men and women, 18 to 54. So it's a very, very broad spectrum of audience, very diverse. So that's what I know how to do right now, is do talk on whatever format. I could be a keystone for whatever it may be, because I know that men and women, young and old, like the show.
How has everything been, too? Did you ever think you were going to lose your job from the Grand Rapids Griffins, or have they had your back?
The Griffins were terrific, and I still have them, of course. They've been very supportive, and that's been key because, when this all hit, when you're fired from the basketball team, you're fired from the local radio station, and you lose the syndication contract because, we owned our own syndication company. We did it right. Me, Free Beer, and Hot Wings were the owners of that. Nobody got their hands on that. That was all ours. And they were forced to buy me out of that. So I lost it all. Wiped out. The Griffins were the only ones who were, on my side. And they showed it by having like these really nice Eric Zane nights and things like that. And people were bringing signs to the game. And what that did publicly was show that, no, this guy's not a menace, man. He's a good guy, and this is really unfortunate. This shouldn't be this way. So that was huge for them to do that.
When you first walked in and did the first game after getting fired, how surreal was it seeing the Free Zane signs?
I cried. I legitimately cried. I couldn't, man, because when I come out on the ice, I've done this a billion times. It gets all tongue-in-cheek where they've got this big intro with flames, and it's just me dancing like an idiot. And everybody's gotten used to it. It's literally been hundreds of times I've done it. And I waved at people. It's just silly. When I came out that first time, man, it's like people got there early and they were just cheering, man. And it was really, really great. It was another big moment of clarity for me where I've had, at least for that short while, you're going to be okay, man. You're going to make it. You're going to somehow rebound from this.
How awesome have the fans been to you? What are some of the nicest things they've said to you?
Well, I've gotten a lot of, hey, you're going to land on your feet. You're going to do great. And even when I didn't believe that, they kept saying it to me. Bringing those signs to those games, it was always amazing. It seems like I get more love now, and I guess it makes sense not being part of the show. Everybody's kind of sympathetic about it, and I think that goes to not putting on I'm a victim face. And I talked to a counselor, and I've said this in the podcast too. Don't look at this as what happened to you. You have to look at it as what happened for you. Now, what are you going to do with it? You're going to sit there and mope, or are you going to capitalize on this goodwill that's been extended to you and try to put something positive onto it and go out there and do what you know how to do? You know, I mean, yeah, it sucks. It sure does. Oh, boy, big deal. You lost your frickin' job. You're not as bad off as some people who don't have a public job like you, where everybody rolls out the red carpet and treats you amazing. I tried to put myself in the shoes of a guy who works in a factory or a shop who just gets thrown out like, you know, yesterday's laundry, and then he's got nothing, man. And I tried to keep a positive spin on it in that regard, that, you know, things are never as good as they seem. They're never as bad as they seem. The truth is somewhere in the middle. So that's kind of what I try to tell myself.
What are some things you have done in your free time to let the anger go? Because I know you're a guy that likes to work out a lot. So have you done more of that? Have you done some new hobbies? How have you tried to keep yourself busy so you don't burn out with your thoughts?
My days usually, I think you nailed it, Ryan. I do swim, bike, and run a lot, and I did it a lot before I got fired, so I couldn't really do too much more. But now it really manifests as, boy, that felt good. I feel good for the time being while the endorphins are kind of flowing. So that, and also I try to put together a little bit map, if you will, of the things we're going to talk about on the show. Some days it just goes out the window depending on what stupid thing my wife will do. That's hilarious. So, and she's been a big funny person that I didn't know she had such a talent to be hilarious. So.
How do you find prep for the show? Is it the same way you did it for the previous show? Do you look at news? Do you talk to your kids and your wife? How do you prep out the show each day?
Yeah, I still try to incorporate things from my life. The latest thread or story arc has been how the 3 women in my house are really beating me over the head about getting a Rottweiler. I do not want another dog. I've got a million pets because of these people, and I have to take care of all of them. So in the bit goes that I'm outnumbered. You know, now in the old days on the show, I could take phone calls. I could interact with people. We could extend the bit, and, you know, probably I'd end up getting a dog. But that's what I would do. Those types of relatable things that was always my bread and butter. I'm getting better at, okay, there's a story in the news, let's say Trump, okay, I got to talk about it. But it's really just me, you know, almost like a commentary, and you can't interact. So that's tough to do. I mean, doing a podcast, if you can't take a phone call, imagine that. So I have to have my ducks in a row as to what my thoughts are and what point of view I want it to go. And you better not screw it up, because I don't like doing 2 takes. So that's how I handle those. And then, you know, talking about charity things that I like to do, I've gotten out. I've been visible during this hiatus. People send me things that they're having, you know, spaghetti dinners, and I show up at the spaghetti dinner and I auction shit off, you know, stuff like that.
Now, going back to the news, since you said you discuss it on your podcast, what do you think about Trump and Ted Cruz and all this madness?
Well, interesting. Today, for example, you know, Fox was all over about how Cruz has got this massive lead in Wisconsin. So it's clear, you know, it's the first time the dude's ever done anything, and they are acting like he just won the election. And so it's obvious they hate Trump. And if Fox News hates Trump, that's incredible. This has been the most interesting thing in the world, and I've dogged Trump big time. But the fact of the matter is, enough Americans believe in the guy that's formidable. In fact, I'm done attacking Trump. And the reason why is because I don't know if it does me any good to sit there and blister that guy, because they get those Trump fans, they beat the hell out of you, man. And I don't want some crazy bastard coming to my house and beating the hillbilly shit out of me while I'm laying in the bed with a bag of doorknobs. I mean, I don't even know. I think it's bad I think it's a bad move right now to go after that guy and just let it play out, because ultimately when Trump gets in office, if he gets in office, all of this tough talk is going to go out the window, because there's going to be so much that he will have to do to make all these things work that he's claimed he'll do. I think people who don't like Trump will be fine, as it always is when any president is elected. But for right now, it's freaking amazing to watch all of this unfold.
Dude, I'm just 22 years old, so I've just seen very few elections, but the vibe I've gotten throughout my whole life is it's always professional when you see the crowd and the rallies. I can't imagine any time I've ever seen fight. It's like watching a wrestling promo at these Trump rallies. It is scary, dude. It's like the movie Idiocracy came to life, man. It's frightening.
Completely. Do you remember the one that started it all? It was the black guy who he was doing something, and then he gave the finger to the crowd.
Yeah.
And that 72-year-old man moved as fast as a cat and just clocked the guy right in the face. It was unbelievable. I couldn't believe the punch. And then the guy says, "Next time we're gonna kill him." Can you believe
my God. And then the things that Trump says, he just sort of endorses it. He's like, yeah, kick him out. It's like, if Trump's going to be a douche, at least try to calm down the crowd. It's like he has fun watching the madness unfold.
Yeah. And I'm glad you said that, because the week earlier, that was the time when he encouraged people to beat the hell out of him. So now, that's exactly what they're doing. We had an idea on the Free Beer and Hot Wings show when Trump came to the arena that coincidentally I made fun of when I got fired. And it was a month before I got fired. And I had an idea. I said, let's rent a plane and put a flying billboard, one of those signs that they pull behind the plane. And the plan was to have it say, "Mr. Trump, go F yourself, signed FBHW." And I wanted to do this bit so bad. I was pricing it out. We had the money. I was going to pay the guy and everything. And then the show killed it because they were afraid that it would come back and bite us in the ass. They're probably right, but that's the bit I wanted to do. I thought that would have been amazing.
I want to ask you this, too, because you're in Michigan. Why aren't more people talking about what's going on in Flint? I find it frightening that we talk about the Ted Cruz sex scandal that doesn't have that much info to it, but nobody's talking about Flint, Michigan, dude. I'm from the Midwest, and it's pissing me off that it's getting no coverage.
Well, no, it's been pretty big in Michigan.
Yeah.
Like when, but yeah, if it isn't going on outside of Michigan, then that is a shame, because what you have there is the poorest of the poor who were poisoned. And if you were at my house and I knowingly had arsenic in my water, and I gave you a drink of that water, and you got very sick or died, well, you all know what would happen to me. So the governor and the president, the head of the EPA, knowingly were doing this and did not warn anybody and tried to cover it up. I mean, did you see the Senate hearings with Snyder and that lady who looks like a dude from the EPA?
I did not. What happened at it?
It was brutal. They reamed these two a new butthole, but I think it was all just a dog and pony show, because you had somebody who was like, let's say, a Democratic senator. He'd go after Snyder, who's a Republican, and just demand his resignation, say unbelievable things to him. And then meanwhile, you get a sympathetic Republican senator who would go after the Democratic-leaning head of the EPA. So you got the sense that this was just a public beat-up session for a pound of flesh. Meanwhile, none of the big wigs have been let go. There's a petition right now to try to get Snyder. In fact, somebody's trying to impeach Snyder, and that's been allowed to proceed, or I should say recall him. But I don't even know if that's going to happen, man. You are absolutely right. The fact that no one has gone to jail over this is insane.
I think it's because it's Flint, Michigan, and not that people look down on Flint, but if this was a major city, people would be talking about it. I just think because it's such an obscure ghetto that nobody really cares unless you're in Michigan.
I had said that on the podcast, and I said that on the air. Poor black people live in Flint, Michigan, and that is not, to me, that means that they're not equal according to the government. According to the governor of Michigan, because if this had taken place in some of the rich Michigan communities, you're absolutely right. They would have immediately blown the whistle and said and got issued a health warning not to drink the water. They waited so long, letting those poor people consume that water. Legionnaires Legionnaire's disease killing them, lead poisoning for children. It's sickening, man.
Has it gotten any better? Because, like I said, there's been no coverage on it. There might be a few tweets where someone retweets something, but nobody knows anything. I'm just speaking for Tampa, Florida. I've heard nothing. Has there been any progress, do you know?
They're ripping out old pipes and starting the process of rebuilding the infrastructure. But they just 2 weeks ago announced that people from Flint wouldn't have to pay their water bill. No kidding. That's how far behind they are in this thing. You're looking at massive millions of dollars will be needed, not only for immediate water needs, but to rebuild the entire infrastructure of that city. Now that all of the pipes that transport their water are, in fact, ruined, then you have to look at the medical costs and the compensation numbers in order to help the victims and victims' families whose children now have lifelong disabilities and learning and cognitive issues because they have lead, which doesn't come out of your body after you jam it in there. It will be affecting them for a lifetime of, lower brain skills and functionality. These are all things that have happened, and these people will have to be compensated for the rest of their lives, and the state has to pay for that. So all of those things have to happen in order to make this work, and yet nobody's head is rolling.
Do things like this happen in cities like Grand Rapids? Because I know that Michigan has two ghetto cities in Flint and then Detroit. So how is Grand Rapids as a city overall? Because I've never been there.
Grand Rapids is, you have a couple of segregated areas almost by geographic layout as typical to any medium-sized city. You have black neighborhoods, you have Hispanic neighborhoods, and then a lot of white people is what it lays out to be. There's enough people here that you do have ups and downs, and some people who socioeconomically might fit the role of like a Flint, Michigan, but it's not nearly as bad.
Before I let you go, what do you see coming up with the Tiger season this year? Because I am a White Sox fan, but I haven't been in the Midwest for 2 years now, so I'm really out of the loop. So what do you think about the Tigers this year?
Well, the season ended last year with Brad Ausmus, and a lot of people thinking, oh, boy, I don't even know if he's going to be back. Well, he's back. So this he is on the hot seat. And I don't know how long Mr. Ilitch is going to go, but, I mean, if things start out poorly for the Tigers, I don't know how long that's going to last. I think Justin Verlander is a guy who it seems like every year, at least the last few years, there's a story in the newspaper about Verlander's got the magic back. He's got the eye of the tiger back. And then something funky happens, and then things go south. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's age. Who knows? But, some of those big horse players that they depended on, I don't know. I mean, they're starting to get a little long in the tooth, like a Verlander even. I hate to say it, Miguel Cabrera. He tends to get injured a little bit each year at some point and then kind of limps home to the end of the year. So, if they can stay healthy and pitching stays strong, maybe it'll work out for Ausmus. But I don't know. I can't say for sure.
Now, you're a very outspoken guy when it comes to the news and sports, and you have a fun show. So where can people find your work online?
Oh, my God. Well, the best place is to go to the Eric Zane fan page on Facebook. Just search, just go on Facebook, facebook.com/Eric Zane fan page. That's fine. You can also find me on Twitter @Eric Zane Show. That'll also work for Instagram. That'll work for Snapchat. And on YouTube, just search Eric Zane and you'll see my channel.
Well, dude, keep up the good work, man. I'm glad to see that you have a positive outlook on this, and I see big things happening because just your attitude, man, and just how you portray yourself on the show, you have positive energy, and it's really entertaining to watch.
Ryan, I thank you so much for calling me. I love talking about the business and just talking in general. It's terrific. It sounds like, and you know what, man? You said you're 22. It sounds like you've been doing this your whole freaking life. You sound great.
Thank you so much, dude.
Good. Your questions are on point. You don't stammer around like a bumbling fool. You did a great job. I got to tell you, it sounded fantastic.
Thank you, sir. And I would love to have you on again because I feel like we're very similar when it comes to ranting because I like to say it like it is, and we all know that that's what you're good at.
Well, yeah, man, anytime. I appreciate the thoughts, and I would love to do that.
All right, sounds good. Keep up the good work, Eric.
Okay, Ryan, have a good one. Thanks again, buddy.
All right, you too. Okay, bye.
Bye-bye.
Hoppe Hour. Hoppe Hour.